Hi, my name is Andy Jeter. I'm Vice President of Enrollment Management here at Andrew College. I'd hoped today for this summer orientation to be greeting you in person. However, we are unable to do that due to the restrictions put in place by the governor's office. But we do look forward to seeing you on campus in person this fall. So what I'd like to do today is go over the financial aid presentation for summer orientation. Now, some of you may have attended preview days or met with financial aid previously. This is going to be a little bit different. We'll talk about the early steps in the FAFSA a little, but we'll also talk about some of the last steps that students need to do in order to complete their financial aid for the year. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to look at the presentation for today. Financial aid all starts with a FAFSA. You'll complete your FAFSA, www.fafsa.ed.gov. Hopefully, most of you have done this already. For some of you who have not, before you file the FAFSA, you and your student will need to get an FSA ID, fsaid.ed.gov. The student will need to have their individual FSA ID. One of the parents will also need to have an FSA ID. If, as a parent, you have multiple students in college and you've already gotten an FSA ID for filing financial aid with the other student, you will use the same FSA ID that you had previously. But each individual student needs their individual FSA ID. Once you apply for it, which the verification process takes about 1 to 3 days, you'll be able to log in using your username or using an email address. For this reason, it's also very important that both the student and the parent use different email addresses when they set up the FSA ID. If you've already filed the FAFSA, but you didn't list Andrew College as one of the colleges to receive the results, this happens sometimes. Say, for example, someone's an athlete and they fill out the FAFSA very, very early and then got in contact with our coaches, have decided that this is where they want to attend school and play ball. Maybe they haven't added Andrew College as a school to receive the results. In that case, what you'll need to do is log back into the FAFSA and just add our school code, which is 001545, or you can add it from the drop-down menu. Direct costs for the 2020-2021 school year. Tuition this year is $19,172. Room and board is $11,728 for a total of $30,900. Now, as was sent out in the parent newsletter last week, and then will also be sent out to students directly this week, we are making a number of single rooms available for the fall at no additional charge. So this is normally a $750 value, but we're doing it in light of the COVID situation and trying to keep students separate and safe. If your student is interested in a single room, not all students are, which is perfectly fine. But if your student is interested in a single room, they will need to go to the Andrew College website. So let's take a look at that. If they go to Student Affairs, Housing and Residential Life, and about midway down, you'll see something about single room availability. Just click right there to open up the single room interest form. Right. Moving on. Some of you may be eligible for the Hope Scholarship. One nice thing was that in this year's budget, state budget, which was cut by 11%, there was not a deduction in the Hope Scholarship. But in order to receive the Hope Scholarship, again, student needs to graduate from a Georgia high school. They need to have at least a 3.0 or higher GPA as calculated by the Georgia Student Finance Commission. That is not done by Andrew College. Andrew College does not make a final decision as to whether or not someone is Hope eligible. Hope does not pay for learning support classes. So in order for a student to receive a full Hope, They must have at least 12 hours of college level coursework going on in the fall. So for example, if they test into, or if they're placed into learning support math, which is a 3-hour course, they must have at least 12 hours of college level coursework in order to still receive the full HOPE. Now, final decisions about HOPE typically are made late June, early July by Georgia Student Finance, and we're sent information as to who is and who is not, or who is HOPE eligible. We will be making any necessary changes to the financial aid packages here over the next week or so. If a student did not have HOPE listed on their award letter, but it turns out they are HOPE eligible, we will certainly add that. Conversely, if a student had HOPE listed on their award letter, but it turned out they are not HOPE eligible, then the college will have to remove that award and the student's balance will increase. At this point too, if a student was listed on their financial aid package as a HOPE scholar, but they're actually a Zell-Miller scholar, then that will be corrected and the award amount will be increased. Now, some families are still in the verification process. Verification doesn't mean you've done anything wrong, doesn't mean the federal government thinks you're a criminal. A percentage of students are selected every year for verification at random. In addition to that, there are some things that can trigger verifications. If a parent owns their own business, if there's been a substantial change in income from year to year, if a student applies as an independent student, a lot of these things can trigger a verification. Now, to complete the verification process, we'll need the completed and signed appropriate verification worksheet. Again, going back to the Andrew College website, if you go to financial aid and tuition, if you go to the FAFSA, you'll see verification, you'll see a copy of the dependent and independent student verification worksheets. The appropriate worksheet would need to be filled out. We would also need to have the one of three things. Either you're able to use the data retrieval tool when you file the FAFSA. You will need an FSA ID in order to do that. If you did not do that, we will need either a copy of your 2018 federal tax transcript, which can be ordered from irs.gov, or a signed and dated copy of your 2018 federal tax return. For example, I usually file with TurboTax, so I keep that on my computer, so I can go back, print off a copy of the 2018 tax return, and sign it, date it, and send it in if needed. Now keep in mind, the 2018 tax return was the one that was filed by April the 15th, 2019. So it's for the 2018 tax year. Depending upon the verification, there may be some other information that may be required. For example, if a student is a male student between the ages of 18 and 25, and it's found that they're not registered with selective service, a student would have to, as part of the process, go ahead and get registered with selective service in order to clear that verification. Sometimes they need a copy of driver's license or something like that. But we'll let you know what information is needed. When you filed the FAFSA, you should have gotten an electronic SAR or student aid report that would indicate to you if there was any problem with your FAFSA. Typically, it had a number in the corner, an EFC, expected family contribution. If it had a little asterisk by it, typically that means you've been selected for verification. Underneath that is typically information that you may need to supply or something that's gone wrong. If, for example, if on the other hand, if you fill out the FAFSA, you got the SAR report and there's no number in that corner, that is not a zero, but nothing, then typically there's something that prevented that FAFSA from fully processing. If you look down a little further in that letter, you'll see what that is and what you need to correct. Now, Stafford Loans. Like most private colleges, we go ahead and put Stafford Loans onto a student's award letter. Of course, the student has the flexibility to accept or decline those loans, but know that if they do decline them, their balance will rise. If they are accepting their student loans, then they need to complete entrance loan counseling and the master promissory note. We like these to be done by no later than August 1st, if at all possible. You'll go to studentloans.gov, and it will be, click there where you can do entrance loan counseling. You will need your FSA ID. The student will need their FSA ID. If you go through and read everything and do what you're supposed to do with it, it takes about 45 minutes to do entrance loan counseling. It takes about 15 to 30 minutes to do the master promissory note. The entrance loan counseling was put in place by the federal government a few years ago, so students wouldn't be blindsided. They'd realize, yes, I'm taking out a loan. Yes, this means it needs to be repaid. Here are some options about how I could repay it. The master promissory note, because a new student is prohibited from receiving funds for the first 30 days of the term. Master promissory note, in that you basically indicate, yes, I know I'm going to receive federal funds, and yes, once those funds are in place, we will pay the school. So typically that comes into your account, and we, if there's still an outstanding balance, which there will be if that loan is used to make up part of that balance, then it'll be credited at that point. Freshman loan amounts, a student can take up to $3,500 in a subsidized or unsubsidized loan. Whether it's subsidized or unsubsidized depends upon the student's expected family contribution. And you would take the cost of attendance to the school. In our case, we also consider things like books, living expenses, travel expenses. So it's a figure between $34,000 and $35,000. You subtract out the expected family contribution. What's left over is the financial need. You then check your award letter. If the loan is used to make up part of your need, then it'll be subsidized. That means the interest is paid by the government while the student's in school, graduates or is out of school for 6 months or longer. If it's not used to make up part of that need, it's going to be an unsubsidized loan, which means the interest does start to accrue. $2,000 worth an additional loan for a total of $5,500, but $2,000 of that is always unsubsidized. So the interest does accrue on that loan once it's handled. Now, if a family is looking for additional funds, there are Parent Plus loans available. Parent Plus loan, eligible parents can borrow up to the cost of attendance minus any other aid the student's receiving. There is a credit check to it. So a parent can be denied a plus loan. If they're denied a plus loan, there are a couple different options. One would be for the student simply to fill out a form, and they can receive up to an additional $4,000 in an unsubsidized Stafford loan. Another option would be, say, for example, if one parent does it and gets denied, for the other parent to try. Sometimes we'll have situations, especially in terms of divorce, where one parent may not be eligible, but the other parent might be. Another option is to have an endorser, which kind of serves the same function as a cosigner. That is, they're agreeing to back the loan if necessary. If somebody does that, it's usually a very close friend or relative, more likely a relative, aunt, uncle, grandparent, someone like that. To apply for the plus loan, you'll go to www.studentloans.gov, which is the same place the students go to do their entrance loan counseling and master promissory note. Only you will click on the parent loan to undergraduate students. You will need to have your FSA ID in order to complete this process, which takes about 15 minutes or so to do. Usually within a day, you'll know whether or not you've been approved for the loan, or at least the financial aid office will know whether or not you've been approved for the loan. Another option that's available to families is the Georgia Student Access Loan. Now, this loan is the best thing going if you're a Georgia resident and eligible for it. It's restricted to Georgia residents. It's taken out in the student's name, so there's no credit check to it. It is at a 1% interest rate. Now, there are a couple of catches to it. First of all, it is a last dollar loan, which means that a student must accept federal student loans first. Student loans. They don't have to do the PLUS loan, but they do have to accept the federal student or Stafford loans in order to be eligible. The loan application is only available at certain times of the year. This year, they have said that it will open in July. Don't know when exactly in July because they don't notify us. What you'll want to do is go to Georgia Futures at gafutures.org. You'll look under Georgia Scholarships and Loans and find the Student Access Loan. You click on the application. If it's open and available, then you can fill it out. If it's not, you won't be able to fill it out yet. Again, this is a student loan, so the student should be filling it out. A student can take out up to $8,000 per year based upon need. So if a student, after receiving their financial aid award letter, has outstanding need, they can take out a loan for up to that amount of outstanding need, up to $8,000. So if they only have a $2,000 need left over, they can take it up to $2,000. If they do not have an outstanding need left, they cannot take this loan. But they are initially eligible for up to $8,000 per year for 4 years. But a student will need to reapply for the loan each year. There's a $50 enrollment fee per loan. So for the fall semester, for example, if a student were taking out the maximum $8,000, it would be $4,000 for the spring, $4,000 for the fall. So the student would actually get $3,950 for the fall and the full $4,000 in the spring. There is a $10 monthly keep in touch payment. We call it KIT payment. It's due every month. If a student does not make that payment during the fall, during the spring, they are not eligible to receive that loan money until they are current with their KIT payments. So it's very important that a student pay that $10 a month just to make sure they don't have any problems with their loan when it comes to the spring semester. Financial aid award letters are processed once the financial aid office receives the results of the FAFSA and any other verification documentation that's needed. We still mail a copy of the award letter. In addition, it's available on Empower as well. I will show you now. If you go, again, back to the Andrew College website, if you go down to the bottom, you'll see Empower. You can click there. It's already welcoming me, but typically, let me log out here for a second. Login page. You would log in using your username and using your password. These were on your acceptance letter. So down at the bottom, you'll have your username and your password for Empower. Once you submit that, you'll see a Financials tab. You can click on that Financials tab, then click on Financial Aid Award Letter. Okay. If you click right here and 2021 is populated, then you know your financial aid award letter is ready. You can click there. At that point, you'll see your award letter. You can there on the screen, if you're accepting everything, there's a button that says accept decline. If there's certain things you want to accept and certain things you want to decline, you can do that there as well. Once you accept that award letter, then we are notified that you have done so. If you would rather, you're welcome instead to sign the paperwork and return it. It's usually a little bit longer, but some people prefer to do that, and that's fine as well. This just simply tells you the same thing I just showed you a minute ago. As far as loans, for a second, let me go back here. If a student or if a parent is not eligible for a PLUS loan, we do work with Sallie Mae and Wells Fargo as far as private loans. Wells Fargo has announced that they are not going to do loans for new customers this year. So that will leave really Sallie Mae is the folks we work through as far as loans. So you can apply for a loan through Sallie Mae if you need it, or if you'd rather do it than doing a PLUS loan. There are also certain options depending upon the bank. You may also get a better interest rate from your bank doing a personal loan. Again, that's totally up to you. One thing that is not listed in this presentation, but is in another part of the orientation program, is billing and and our tuition payment plan. So let me just kind of show you that. Again, if you go to the Andrew College website, under the financial aid section, student parent loans and payment options, this talks again a little bit more about student parent loans. We look at the Stafford loan, how to do the interest loan counseling, how to do master promissory note, federal PLUS loan, student access loan. Unfortunately, this loan for United Methodist students is closed already, and there's a link to Wells Fargo and Sallie Mae. As I said, Wells Fargo is not doing loans for new students this year. If a student does accept loans, Stafford loans, and or the federal PLUS loan, this form does need to be filled out for student loans, student authorization to Andrew College regarding use of federal Title IV funds. If they do receive a federal PLUS loan, this parent's authorization needs to be done. And just what the name implies, this should be filled out by the parents. This should be filled out by the student and then sent back to our office. Back here to loan and payment options, and then we'll look at FAFSA tuition management. FAFSA is a private company that we work through. They will do billing in monthly increments. So what you may want to do, for example, if everything is, once all financial aid awards are listed, let's say you owe $2,000. You may decide to do a PLUS loan. You may decide to pay that out of pocket. You may decide to do the FAFSA management program. And with FAFSA, you can divide that into 4 or 5 monthly payments, depending upon when you decide to enter into a contract with FAFSA. There is an enrollment fee for it. I believe it's $30, somewhere between $30 and $50, but there's no interest charged. One thing you will need to make sure that you are doing, ideally, the best thing to do is to hook it up where it does take out that money monthly. That way you can set it up and forget about it. If you don't set it up that way, so it comes out as an automatic draft, then you will need to make sure that you are making those payments every month. We typically will have students that sign up for FAFSA, but then don't make the monthly payments. They get ready for the second semester and they owe a large bill because they haven't made the payments. Again, the best way to do it is an automatic draft, but you do have the option to pay monthly by credit card. But you will need to make sure that you're doing that. If you have questions about FAFSA, again, you can look here, FAFSA tuition management. There's all kind of information about it. If you have any questions and need to reach the financial aid office, it is better at this point during the year to try to reach financial aid by email than it is by phone. For the simple fact that we have a two-person office in financial aid, if you call, chances are either we're going to have to let it go to voicemail because we're working with someone else, or if we pick up and find out what the problem is, then we're going to have to, or they're going to have to research the problem and then call you back. Whereas if you send it out by email, let them know what you need, let them know what your questions are, then they can get that information and then get back with you in a more timely manner. We do ask, so if you do send out an email, that it doesn't simply say, please call me. At least make sure you're providing some context for financial aid. They try to, again, answer as many questions as quickly as possible. It is a two-person office. Depending upon the time of year, again, this is a very heavy time of year for them. It may take a day or so for them to get back with you, but they will get back with you. But again, email is the best way to get in touch with them. If you find that you have tried several times and you're not able to get through with financial aid, please email the student's admission counselor and let them know. And that way they can also check with financial aid for you. Right. So that is the financial aid section of the orientation. If you have questions just in general, feel free to email me if you'd like to. My email address is Andy Jeter, ANDYGEETER @andrewcollege.edu. You can also email admissions, ADMISSIONS @andrewcollege.edu. If you have specific financial aid questions, again, email financial aid @andrewcollege.edu. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoy the rest of the orientation program. We will send out a survey here after the program to see if there's anything we need to change or additional information we need to give or things we need to do to improve. So be looking for that, and we look forward to getting your feedback. All right. Thank you all so much, and we look forward to seeing you in the fall. Go Fighting Tigers.